much, Grant. Now we'll hear from Ashley.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. It definitely means a lot to me because food and animals and the systems where we get our nutrients really is something that I'm very interested in. Myself, I study environment and law at Macquarie University, and I have led 2 of Sea Shepherd's international campaigns in Japan, and where we document the live capture and slaughter of dolphins for human consumption and both marine parks and entertainment purposes, SeaWorld, places like that. I also started my own NGO called Fin Free Sydney with my sister when I found out how rife the shark finning trade was in Australia. We tend to think, oh no, that's not happening here, China, Hong Kong. No, we actually import over 40 tonnes of shark fin to Australia every year, which is just insane. Shark finning might be outlawed in our waters, but we're importing it, we're supporting the industry, and also it doesn't stop fishermen from bringing the whole carcass of the shark onto the boat, finning it on the boat, and then selling the fins off to our shark fin industry. So that is happening. I decided last minute not to talk about shark finning and dolphins. I could talk about that for 3 years. Feel free to ask me questions afterwards, because I looked at the other talks of the other subject matter of the other speakers, and I thought it might be too far out of context. And I also didn't think that as Green members, a lot of you people here, I thought the likelihood of a lot of you people here wanting to eat dolphin or go to marine parks was very, very low. So I thought I might kind of be preaching to the choir. Yeah. So I decided to change the topic of my talk to the subject of methane and enteric fermentation. This directly ties in to food and sustainability and livestock production, and it's something that policy makers, consumers, and producers really know very little about. There is currently no policy that governs enteric fermentation, which is just absolutely insane, in my opinion, because when I go through my presentation, I will show you just how serious this issue is. Okay, where should I start? Domesticated animals such as cows, sheep, and goats are ruminant animals, as Grant was saying, that possess a large forestomach called a rumen. The rumen is part of a unique digestive system called enteric fermentation. Now, enteric fermentation is a naturally occurring process where anaerobic microbes known as methanogens decompose fermented and ingested feed. The feed enters the digestive tract and then comes out as a soluble compound. Now, one of these, the byproducts of enteric fermentation is methane. Now, methane is really important, and so is the feed that is fed to that animal. As Grant was saying, it's like us buying cheap, crappy food. If you feed your animals crappy feed, the energy intake from the animal will be incredibly low, thus the animal will produce more methane. Now, the majority of methane is released through ruminants' eructation, known as burps, as you can see. In addition, a small portion of methane is produced in the large intestine of ruminants and is passed through as flatulence. As well as the direct release of methane through ruminants, methane is also released through storage and large concentrations of animal manure. I'm glad that Jeremy touched on the water issue and Jenny touched on the arable land and everything like that, because there are whole other issues that account to the livestock sector. Beef and dairy cattle are the greatest methane emitters from enteric fermentation, as you can see here. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has found that enteric fermentation accounts for nearly a quarter of all global anthropogenic methane emissions, which is just absolutely crazy. So out of all of the emissions and dangerous greenhouse gases that are emitted through the process of the livestock sector, enteric fermentation, which is simply a burp, accounts for nearly a quarter of all of the methane that is emitted into the atmosphere. So, the capacity of greenhouse gases I'm going to talk now about global warming potential. So global warming potential is the capacity of greenhouse gases able to trap heat within the atmosphere. The global warming potential measures the severity of greenhouse gases by comparing their warming potency to carbon dioxide. The newly widely accepted figure for global warming potential is 25 using a 100-year period or 72 using a 20-year period. So the 20-year period is more widely accepted now because of the severity that we are warming the climate. 20 years is better, so you're able to assess the amount that it is changing and also look at ways to reduce the methane in the atmosphere. The table here displays that methane traps up to 100 more times heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide in a 5-year period and 72 more times within a 20-year period. Now the good news is that methane also leaves the atmosphere within a decade. So although methane's lifespan is short in comparison to that of carbon dioxide, it's a rapid and intense climate changer. So although I agree with a lot of Grant's points and Jenny's, I think that if you want to eat meat, you need to do it sustainably. You need to not talk about an animal as a product being delicious and tasty, because that is not what it is. An animal is a sentient being that has a life. It is a he or she, it is not an it. So do I think that eating beef is sustainable at all? No, I don't. Yes, I don't think, like Jenny said, we all stop eating it at once. That would just be crazy. But as an actual process that warms the climate at such a rapid degree and takes a lot of the land, do I think it's sustainable even though it's on a free-range farm? No, I don't, because they're still producing a hell of a lot of carbon dioxide and methane into that atmosphere. So I think we definitely need to look at the number of animals that we're farming, and at the moment the degree that we're farming animals is just so large that I think that we need to look at reducing those levels. Now, why do we need to reduce methane emissions? Well, it is otherwise predicted to increase the larger global warming potential than carbon dioxide. It currently accounts for 64% of Australia's agricultural greenhouse gas emissions. So that's in Australia. So a simple burp is currently accounting for 64% of our agricultural greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, that's just insane. I've learned about this simply from deep research. This isn't told to us. None of this information is told to us. And you know what? A lot of this information and what it means isn't even told to producers. So even if producers, they really care about the environment and climate, a lot of them don't know the damage that is being caused through the livestock. So as I was saying before, it also represents a loss of feed energy. So if reduced, it will improve the livestock productivity, which is really important because then we need less cows to produce the same amount of meat, so utilising the animal, if they are fed better food. So the worse food, the more animals we need to produce the same amount of meat. So there are quite a few management strategies to reduce the number of our meat output and also lower methane levels. So I'll just quickly go through some of the management strategies. They're quite long. I don't know how much time I have. So the management strategy. So we've got improved animal management, we've got pasture management, feed supplements, animal breeding and rumen manipulation. So a lot of these management strategies really don't have much research done into them. At the moment, there is nothing that has actually been found aside from improved pasture, feed and animal management, which are sort of best practice methods, so you don't need a lot of scientific evidence to work it out. Considering the amount of damage that we're doing to the atmosphere, there isn't much research that has gone into all of these management strategies, which is very concerning, I think. So, feed supplements. Well, fats and oils change the fermentation process in the rumen and enables better digestion, as I was saying. They've looked at nitrate and tannins. Nitrate has the potential to reduce emissions by interfering with the fermentation process and producing ammonia. However, it can be toxic to the animal, so there is more research required there. Tannins are a natural plant compound that has a toxic impact on methanogens in the rumen. However, it can also cause bloat to the animal. So then you're reducing your productivity there as well. So there's quite a lot of barriers in a lot of these strategies. So as Grant was saying before as well, we've got the improvement of animal genetics. So we can improve production traits as in growth rate, the carcass weight and wool production that will contribute significantly to the amount of emissions intensity. Now we go to the reduction of stock numbers. So methane is directly correlated with the total population of ruminant animals. Australia's enteric emission declined between 1990 to 2010 due largely to a reduction in sheep numbers, but now it's increasing at a rapid rate due to good season and overseas demand and are projected to increase further by 2020. At the moment, we are exporting 70% of our livestock. So it's not even being used to feed here in Australia, it's overseas demand. Whereas I know that population's booming and there are a lot of hungry people in the world. We really need to minimise the impact on the environment, especially because Australia's already very warm and we do already have holes in the ozone layer. We really rapidly need to reduce the stock numbers. Producers can help animals maximise feed energy by eliminating parasites and nutrient deficiency. This is just another best management practice. Grazing on younger grasses is another management strategy because it's more digestible. Now, it's important to note, one of the things I found on the New South Wales DPI website was maximising reproductive efficiency. So they want to maximise the breeding productivity per animal through earlier mating, improved nutrition and genetics. This is to increase the frequency of a mother having calves. Now, then they slaughter the mother earlier in order to reduce methane levels. However, this practice doesn't quite make sense, as the more calves the mother produces, the more cows that are producing methane. So slaughtering the mother isn't going to do really that much. It's going to take her out of it, but she's already produced more calves than another cow. So looking at all the strategies, there's little research. The justifications just seem ridiculous, and they don't have much evidence to support it. There was no evidence to support that claim by the New South Wales DPI at all. It was a mere 2 sentences. This is a great practice. Just cull the animals earlier, therefore you've got less methane in the atmosphere, which is obviously correct, but the problem I have is that animals are never or rarely considered as a stakeholder here. So, and when we're talking about things, humans always place so much emphasis on we need to consider all the stakeholders. Refugees, they don't have a voice. Children, they don't have a voice. Well, you know what? Animals don't have a voice either, but they're still just as important. We have courts for the environment. We don't have courts for animals, and they are the most marginalised species and sentient beings on the planet. So the problem I have here is, yes, if you want to eat meat, do it sustainably. But we need to reduce the amount of animals that are being produced for meat, and we need to look at ways that we can improve their lives before they are slaughtered. And we need to all not be hypocrites and see animals for what they are, which is not simply a meal. And I agree with Grant, we need to honour their life. There's a lot of Native American cultures that say a prayer for the animal and for the soul of the animal, and then that animal lives through that person for the rest of that person's life. Here we go to Coles, we buy a cheap packet of $5 meat and then we go, yep, oh man, or go to Macca's, buy a cheeseburger, and that's the end of it. Whereas the reality is that animal existed. It may have been a bobby calf that was slaughtered at 3 days old. It may have been a mother that was ripped from her child and cried for 3 days. Because if you've ever seen what happens with dairy, the mother cries and screams for her young for days. So, and I think everyone in this room here will agree that if they've got a pet, their cat or a dog has sentience. I mean, there is a problem with society in the way that we will not eat our pet dog, but will then go eat a cow, especially with pigs, because like Jeremy was saying, they've got the intelligence of a 4-year-old child and more. They're extremely intelligent animals, and we are just completely capitalising on their pain and their bodies. So, anyway, okay. In 2014, Peter Scarborough, as Jenny had this before, and his colleagues at Oxford University examined the actual diets of over 20,000 meat eaters, 15,000 vegetarians, 8,000 pescatarians, which are people that don't eat meat but they eat fish, and 2,000 vegans aged 20 to 79 in the United Kingdom. So, what would happen if the entire world reduced its meat consumption? Well, I was very, very shocked myself to find out how rapidly we could help the environment just by reducing our meat consumption. So like Jenny said, if everyone in the world stopped eating meat just one day a week, the difference, the impacts on global warming are so significant, the climate would drop by 0.5 degrees or more. So it's just crazy the amount that we can do just from changing our diet. I also just want to quote sources that I have here, huge bodies such as the United Nations that all suggest the argument that I'm putting forward. A diet higher in plant-based foods and lower in calories than animal-based foods is more health-promoting and is associated with less environmental impact than the current US diet. The average vegan's diet carbon footprint was about 60% lighter than the average diet heavy in meat. Reducing methane emissions would create tangible benefits almost immediately. And finally, a substantial reduction of impacts would only be possible with a substantial worldwide diet change away from animal products. Okay, to my final points. Now, a lot of us can relate to our pets and animals such as dolphins that have an incredible amount of intelligence and self-awareness. However, I have seen hundreds of dolphins slaughtered. I've seen mothers fight for an hour and a half while every single member of their family has been slaughtered in front of them, while they've been tethered to a wall bleeding and drowning to death. I have looked in the eyes of a mother matriarch whale before her family was killed and seen the fear and pain in her eyes. There is no difference between me, a dolphin, a cow, a pig, a sheep, a chicken. Whatever happens, the way you kill an animal sustainably or not, that animal knows that its death sentence is coming. It knows that it's going to be slaughtered. And as humans, intelligent mammals, we need to question how high our moral obligations go. I am extremely, I have very high morals. I personally feel as though I'm a hypocrite hugging my cat and then going and eating a cow. I just think it's wrong. I have had a pet cow in my life. Pigs and the intelligence is just, they're so aware that I think you need to question the way you think about animals and your morals and the golden rule, essentially, when eating meat. So that's just a whole other question. I decided not to do a talk completely on sentience today because I wanted to try and make it relate to the subject matter of this talk. However, the main point that I'm trying to drive home from all of this is that, yes, we should eat meat sustainably. Yes, we should take care of the animals as much as we can. But at the end of the day, they are a stakeholder too, and we need to think of them as a being and not just as an it and not as a product. So these are all photos I've taken myself. I believe that if a being suffers, we have a moral obligation to consider that suffering. How can we just stand by and ignore that suffering simply because it is a cow, a pig, or a sheep, and not a member of our family? Animals have the capacity to experience happiness and enjoyment, the same as they are able to experience pain and suffering. There is no difference. That is why I think that we need to incorporate strategies that consider the animal as an equal stakeholder and not just a product that satisfies human demand. And this is my friend Bully Bull who is a beautiful cow that he's really amazing. I don't care if you think I'm gross. I was passing him the bread because he's so friendly. I walked. He recognises me out of everyone that comes to visit him. And when I say goodbye to him, there was this one time, I said, bye, Bully Bull, and I didn't want to go because he makes me so happy. He's got this crazy, really bright personality. And I walked away, and then he started walking away, and I turned back. And at the exact same point, I turned back to look at him, he looked at me. And it's the thing that we need to do is we need to give them an opportunity. A lot of humans don't give animals an opportunity. We look at it as a chicken as a product. We look at it as a piece of food. But if you get to know that animal, you will know that that animal has a life too. They have motives. They have objectives. I met a chicken once that was obsessed with this other chicken and would spend all day trying to find worms to impress that one chicken. And it was hilarious. And one day he actually faked finding a worm. He was like, oh, I've got a worm, I've got a worm. She ran over and he was like, and she was like, where's the worm? And he was like, oh. And she was like, oh, and then ran off. Like, given the opportunity, I just think it's really important to consider animals as a stakeholder here. I think that the point that I just had to say today is that, yes, let's look at it sustainably, but yes, let's also consider whether we need to be eating meat at all, because there actually is, in new studies, there is actually more iron in a tray of broccoli than in a massive piece of steak. So I don't know what other information people have, but this is the information I have from recent studies. And as incredibly intelligent animals that we are, and especially in the privileged society we live in now, we need to question whether we need to be eating meat at all. Thank you.